Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here, and get ready for Gnosis. Well, one of the important issues of Gnosis is understanding where you are in the universe and the big universe that this is. The actual knowing of and having factual proof, which is now pretty much common knowledge to everybody. There's just so much of it. So many people are talking about it that you can't really deny it. And that's the actual interaction of extraterrestrials with the Earth population, who is connected to this population in many, many ways. This is a fact. Anyone who doesn't believe this is an ignorant buffoon. What I want to do as the actually Lord Commander of the Earth Protectorate and who runs the Alien Resistance Movement and HARM, the Hostile Alien Resistant Movement, we work with all positive aliens and the Space Brotherhood. Now, one of the interesting facts is that few people seem to understand is that there's always been an amazing thing when we talk about the Nazis and their so-called advanced technologies. And where did all this come from out of nowhere? Well, there's many issues here, and also the issue is, was it so critical to break the German codes, as we are told in a recent movie? And of course the horrible things that happened to that man, because unfortunately per the ridiculous laws out of the United Kingdom, which homosexuality was illegal until 1969, after saving, and I'm not sure he really did, but per the movie, it was the fact that millions and millions of people were saved because he had inside information on the codes that was going on. Of course, per the British, the Americans knew the codes of the Germans way before that, not directly, but indirectly, and we're going to talk about that. But even after doing all of that, they threatened to throw him in prison for soliciting a homosexual prostitute, made him take horrible injections, which he died soon afterwards. I mean, really? In a country known for its homosexuality, and always has been, in public school or private school systems, as they call it there, where debauchery of homosexual is just commonplace, the insultingness of that is beyond understanding. But let's get to the fact. The fact is that the Americans had broken the Japanese code years before this incident happened. Now, they didn't share it with anybody because of the problem that would incur. Unfortunately, Britain has always been kind of untrustworthy. We have that today with the little brat prince, the red-headed little bastard, literally, who goes around wearing Nazi uniforms when he actually 60,000 British civilians were murdered by the bombings of England. It's okay. Little red-headed monkey boy. Well, you know. So the whole idea is that this way, the Americans had broken the Japanese code. Now the Japanese, like the clonish people they are, similar to their buddies, the Germans, otherwise known as Deutschlanders, the Arabs that they are, because that's where they come from. They come from Iran. That's what Aryan is, Arab Aryans. So the whole idea is that this is the reality of it all. So they had broken the Japanese code. The Japanese were talking on their code machines every single detail of what was going on in Germany. They got tours of everything. They were informed by everything. They had absolutely almost every single military secret the Germans had was passed to the Japanese, to their ambassador, apparently. And he wrote all this down and transferred it over to the Japanese High Command. So anything that the Germans did, the Americans knew exactly what they were doing. While the Brits were around drinking tea and jumping around, not knowing what's going on. So, of course, that happened in most of the war with them. So the whole idea is that this is a fact. Now, what is the other interesting fact that happened during these communiques? Well, the Japanese ambassador wrote to his Führer, Hiyahita, and the Japanese High Command, that the Germans told him that this advanced engineering that nobody quite can understand where all this came from. And it came from a lot of places, including all the people they murdered and imprisoned and forced to work for them, the geniuses from all over Europe that had all this information. And of course, it was slave labor, worked to death, tortured, that did dangerous things, who died by the tens of thousands, like the 15,000 that were murdered under von Braun, the Nazi, who then started the Nazi aerospace organization, otherwise known as Nazia in America, while our American scientists were thrown in the gutter. Of course, the Russians were smart. They hired the Germans and found out what kind of boobs they were and got rid of them within a couple of months. And of course, they are still running the rockets today. You know, we don't have a rocket up to the space shuttle. We have to take the Russians. Well, they used their own scientists and got rid of those Nazis that built the crap that we had and still have to this day. So the whole idea is that the Japanese stated, and where would this come from? Why would they even say this if the information wasn't true? Why would you include that? Because there was a question, well, where is this? These are unusual designs, and I'm not sure they're that unusual. A lot of these designs could go back into medieval times in terms of drawings that we found from different great Italian engineers, like the wing of a plane, not being a fuselage held by wings, but the whole airplane. These things go back a long times, as do tanks, submarines, etc. Da Vinci did all this stuff. It was written down. So I'm not sure. But what did they tell the Japanese? Apparently they're buddies and pals, and there's a whole connection there. They found thousands of Tibetans dressed in SS uniforms that had committed suicide in Berlin. That's a nice recommendation for all Tibetan Buddhism, is it? How nice. Did they work in the camps and murder the little babies like was done there and rape everybody? It's so wonderful, those great Jedis. So the whole idea is that this is the reality of it. But they told them that this technology came from Orion. Now, Orion wasn't an Irish guy. It's Orion. No. Orion meaning extraterrestrials. And there was a lot of talk that there was extraterrestrials that met with or they captured different spacecraft that they reversed engineered. And this came from the actual ambassador who gave us all the other information about D-Day and all the troop movements and what was happening here and there. All that information was correct now, 100% correct. Why wouldn't this be 100% correct? Well, it is. Now, the intricacies of this have never been fully released because of the American traitors and the cowardice atmosphere, or the reactions of the beaten and demoralized French, which everybody hates, and the incompetent Brits. And, of course, the Nazi Americans who allowed all this to come on, particularly led by the Nazi general, who I allege, Patton, who was taken into the inner circles of the Nazi criminal occult lodges during his time at the Olympics in Berlin. I was told this by a person who was involved with the Third Army and actually so forth. I'll have another audio on that, but I allege that. It's hard to prove anything in life, isn't it? Can you prove you're even alive? Well, the bottom line is that all of this, so the technology supposedly came from this. So what do we have to do about this stuff, and what are they? Who were these people that helped that? What was the point of it? Why did was it crashed ships? Did they reverse engineer things? These are all the questions we're in. Or did they get direct help from some sort of bad, hostile aliens? Maybe even what we call the Nordics, but the Nordics are not Germans. Germans are not Nordics, they're Arabs. Nordics are a different tribe, and I will explain that in other lectures. But were these some renegade group that came down there and helped them, or were they misinformed? But needless to say, none of this meant anything because the incompetency of the Germans of having to run or build anything, which they really couldn't do and never had a chance. They never had the industrial might to go against anybody, and in the end, that's what counts. The rest of it was kind of a fantasy. What few people understand is only 5% of the entire German army was mechanized in World War II. They used millions of horses. Another thing you don't get. Point is, this was not the great mechanized war. Maybe you see that in movies, because kind of having horses running with a guy carrying a machine gun on it kind of looks weird. Looks like one of those bad After the Fall movies. Sword and sorcery. But this is the reality. So, very, very interesting that this technology seems to be linked to the captured of ships, or possibly linked to hostile extraterrestrials that have come here and tried to assist a particular radical group of maniacs. And how long has this been going on in general? And what do we have to say about it? There seems to be a huge amount of hostile extraterrestrials still coming to this planet, messing with the people here. Is our psychotic, evil behavior that makes no sense, our destruction of our own house? I mean, we want to live and we want proper housing, but we go and burn it down. Does that make any sense, to destroy the earth that we live off of? Why are we so hostile towards each other? Does this make sense? Why aren't we building giant hospital ships instead of aircraft carriers? Why do we need another missile instead of a giant university to teach? Why are we in constant conflict on every single level? This makes absolutely no sense. Well, I'm going to talk about this and the extraterrestrial viruses that have affected people in a time when there really is viruses that are affecting people physically, but is more going on? Well, we'll address all these fascinating questions in extra lectures. But remember, the statement made is that all the technology comes from Orion. Interesting. Until next time.